Chapter 14. Percy and Padfoot. Harry was the first to awake in his dormitory next morning. He lay for a moment watching the swirl in the chink of sunlight falling through the gap in his four posters hanging and savored the thought that it was Saturday. The first week of term seemed to have dragged on forever, like one giant history of magic lesson. Judging by the sleep silence and the flesh-minted look of that beam of sunlight, it was just after daybreak. He pulled open the curtain around his bed, got up and started to dress. The only sound apart from the distant twittering of bird was the slow, deep breathing of his fellow Gryffindors. He opened his school bag carefully, pulled out the parchment and quill, and headed out of the dormitory for the common room, making straight for his favorite scratchy old armchair beside the now extinct fire. Harry settled himself down comfortable by uncontrolled his parchment. While looking around the room, the details of crumpled up bit of parchment, old gobstone, empty ingredient jar, and candy wraps that usually covered the common room at the end of each day was gone. As were all Hermione's elf-hat wondering vaguely how many elves had now been set free, whether they wanted to be free or not. Harry uncorked his ink bottle, dipped his quill into it, and then held it suspended an inch above the smooth, yellowish surface of his parchment, thinking hard. But after a minute or so, he found himself staring around the empty grate at the complete loss for what to say. He could not appreciate how hard it had been for Ron and Hermione to write his letter over the summer. How was he supposed to tell Cyrus everything that had happened over the past week and pose all the questions he was burning to ask without giving potential letter thieves a lot of information he did not want them to have? He sat quite motionless for a while, gazing into the fireplace, then finally coming to a decision. He dipped his quill into the ink bottle once more and set it resolutely upon the parchment. Dear Snuffle, hope you are okay. The first week back here been terrible. I'm really glad it's the weekend. We have got a new defense against the dark art teacher, Professor Umbridge. She's nearly as nice as your mom. I'm writing because that thing I wrote to you about last summer happened again last night when I was doing a detention with Umbridge. We are all missing out, biggest friend. We hope he'll be back soon. Please write back quick. Best, Harry. Harry reread his letter several times, trying to see if, from the point of view of an outsider, he could not see how they would know what he was talking about or who he was talking to. Just from reading this letter, he did hope Cyrus would pick up the hint about Hagrid and tell them when he might be back. Harry did not want to ask directly in case he drew too much attention to that Hagrid might be up to while he was not at Hogwarts. Considering it was a very short letter, it had taken a long time to rewrite. Sunlight had crept halfway across the room while he had been working on it, and he could now hear distant sound of movement from the dormitories above. Sealing the parchment carefully, he climbed through the portrait hole and headed off for the owlery. I would not go that way if I were you, said nearly headless Nick, drifting disconsolately through the wall just ahead of him. As he walked down the passage, Pius is planning an amusing joke on the next person as the perch of Paracelsus halfway down the corridor. Does it involve Paracelsus falling on top of the person's head? Asked Harry. Funnily enough, it does, said nearly headless Nick in the bored voice. Subtlety has never been Pew's strong point. I'm off to try and find the bloody Baron. He might be able to put a stop to it. See you, Harry. Here, bye, said Harry, and instead of turning right, he turned left, taking a longer but safer route up to the owlery. His spirit rose as he walked past window after window showing brilliantly blue sky. He had training later. He would be back on the quick pitch at last. Something brushed his ankle. He looked down and saw the caretaker's skeletal grey cat, Mrs. Norris, slinking past him. She turned lamplight yellow eyes upon him for a moment before disappearing behind a statue of Wilfred and wistful. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Harry called after her. She had the unmistakable air of a cat that was off to report to her boss. Yet Harry could not see why he was perfectly entitled to walk up to the Wowlery on Saturday morning. The sun was high in the sky now, and then Harry entered the owlery. The glasses windows cast his eyes thick silvery beam of sunlight crisscrossed the circular room in which hundreds of owls nested on rafters, a little restless in the early morning light, clearly just returned from hunting. The straw-covered floor crunched a little as he stepped across tiny animal bones, craning his neck for a sight of Hedwig. "There you are," he said, "here somewhere near the very top of the valuated ceiling. Get down here, I have got a letter for you." With a low hoot, she screeched straight white wing and soared down onto his shoulder. "Right, I know this says snuffle on the outside," he told her, giving her the letter to clasp in her beak and without knowing exactly why, whispering, "But it's for Cyrus, okay?" She blinked her amber eyes once and he took that to mean that she understood. "Safe flight then," said Harry, and he carried her to one of the windows with a moment's pressure of his arm. Hedwig took off into a blindly bright flight. He watched her until she became a tiny black speck and vanished. He switched his gaze to Hagrid's hut, clearly visible from this window, and just as clear, uninhabited, the chimney smokeless, curtain drawn. The treetops of the forbidden forest swayed in the light breeze. Harry watched them, savoring the fresh air on his face, thinking about which later. And then he saw it, a great reptile winged horse, just like the ones pulling the Hogwarts carriage, and very black wings spread wide like a pterodactyls rose up out of the tree like grotesque giant bird. It soared in a great circle and then plunged once more into the trees. The whole thing had happened so quickly Harry could hardly believe what he had seen except that his heart was hammering madly. The owlery door opened behind him. He leapt in shock and turning quickly saw Cho Chang holding a letter and a parcel in her hand. "Hi," said Harry automatically. "Oh, hi," she said breathlessly. "I didn't think anyone would be up here this early. I only remembered 5 minutes ago. It's Annie Mom's birthday." He held up the parcel. "Right," said Harry. His brain seemed to have jammed. He wanted to say something funny and interesting, but the memory of that terrible winged horse was fresh in his mind. "Nice day," he said, gesturing to the window. His insides seemed to shrivel with embarrassment. "The weather," he was talking about the weather. "Yeah," said Chow, looking around for a suitable owl. Which condition? I haven't been out all week, have you? No, said Harry. Chow had selected one of the school band owl. She coaxed it down onto her arm and it held out an owling leg so that she could attach the parcel. Hey, the Gryffindor got a new keeper yet? She asked. Yeah, said Harry. It's my friend Ron Weasley. Do you know him? The tornado hated, said Chow rather coolly. Is he good? Yeah, said Harry. I think so. I didn't see his child, though. I was in detention. Chow looked up, the parcel only half attached to the owl's leg. That average woman's fool, she said in a low voice, putting you in detention just because you told the truth about how, how he died. Everyone heard about it. It was all over the school. You were really brave standing up to her like that. Harry inside inflated so rapidly he felt as though he might actually float a few inches off the dropping stew floor. Who care about a stupid flying horse? Chow thought he was really brave. For a moment he considered accidentally on purpose showing her his skirt hand as he helped her tie her parcel onto her owl. But the very instant that the thrilling thought occurred, the owlery door opened again. Bleach, the caretaker, came whizzing into the room. There were purple patches on his sunken, winced cheek, his jaw were a quiver, and his thin grainy grey hair shelved. He had obviously run here. Miss Norris came tottering at this hill, gazing up at the owl overhead and mewing hungrily. There was a restless shifting of wing from above, and a large brown owl snapped his back in a menacing fashion. Ah, said Fletch, taking a flat-footed step toward Harry. Her cheek trembled with anger. I had a tip off that you are entering place as you order of duck bombs. Harry folded his arm and stared at the caretaker. Who told you I was ordering dung bombs? Chow was looking from Harry to Fletch, also throwing the barn owl on her arm, tried to standing on one leg, gave an admonitor put, but she ignored it. I have my sources, said Fletch in a self-satisfied yes. Now, or whatever it's if it's you sending. Feeling immensely thankful that he had not dawdled in posting of the letter, Harry said, I can't, it's gone. Gone? Said Fletch, his face contorting with rage. Gone, said Harry calmly. Fletch opened his mouth furiously, mouthed for a few seconds, then racked Harry rope with his eyes. How do I know you haven't got it in your pocket? Because I saw him send it, said Chow, Fletch rounded on her. You saw him? Angrily. That's right, I saw him, she said fiercely. There was a moment's pause in which Fletch glared at Chow and Chow glared right back. Then the caretaker turned and settled back toward the door. He stopped his hand on the handle and looked back at Harry. If I get so much as a whiff of dung bomb, he stumped off down the stairs. Miss Norris cast a last longing look at the owls and followed him. Harry and Chow looked at each other. Thanks, Harry said. No problem, said Chow, finally fixing the parcel to the barn owl's other leg. Her face slightly pink. You weren't ordering dung bomb, were you? No, said Harry. I wonder why he thought that you were then. She said as she carried the owl to the window. Harry struggled. He was quite as mystified by that as she was. Oddly, it was not bothering him very much at this moment. Then left the owlery together. At the entrance of the corridor that led toward the west wing of the castle, Chow said, I am going this way. Well, I'll see you around, Harry. Yes, see you. She smiled at him and departed. He walked on, feeling quietly elated. He had managed to have an entire conversation with her and not embarrass himself once. You were really brave standing up to her like that. She had called him brave. She did not hate him for being alive. Of course, she had preferred Cedric. He knew that, though, if he had only asked her to the ball before Cedric had, things might have turned out differently. She had seemed sincerely sorry that she had to refuse when Harry had asked her. Morning, he said brightly to Ron and Hermione, joining them at the Gryffindor table in the Great Hall. What are you looking so pleased about? Said Ron, eyeing Harry in surprise. Which later, said Harry happily, pulling a large platter of bacon and egg toward him. Oh yeah, said Harry. He put down the bite of toast he was eating and looked a large swing of pumpkin juice. Then he said, listen, you don't fancy going out a bit earlier with me, do you? Just to give me some practice before training so I can, get my eye in beat. Yeah, okay, said Harry. Look, I don't think you should, said Hermione seriously. You are both really behind on homework as it. But she broke off. The morning post was arriving, and as usual, the dairy prophet was soaring toward her in the beak of a screech owl, which landed perilously close to the sugar bowl and held out a leg. Hermione pushed a nut into its leather pouch, took the newspaper and scanned the front page critically as the owl took off again. Anything interesting? Said Ron. Harry smiled. He knew Ron was keen to get her off the subject of homework. No, she sighed. Just some guff about the bass player in the Weird Sister getting married. She opened the paper and disappeared behind it. Harry devoted himself to another help of egg and bacon. One was staring up at the high window, looking slightly preoccupied. Wait a moment, said Hermione suddenly. Oh no, Cyrus, what's happened? Said Harry, and he snatched at the paper so violently that it tripped down the middle of that he Hermione were holding half-each. The Ministry of Magic has received a tip-off from a reliable source that Cyrus Black, notorious mass murderer Black is currently hiding in London. Hermione read from her half in an anguished whisper. Lucius Malfoy. I'll bet anything, said Harry in a low, furious voice. He did recognize Cyrus on the platform. What? Said Ron, looking alarmed. You didn't say. Shh, said the other two. Ministry warned Wizardian community that Black is very dangerous. Killed 13 people. Broke out of the cabin. The usual rubbish, Hermione concluded, laying down her half of the paper and looking fearfully at Harry and Ron. Well, he just won't be able to leave the house again, that's all, she whispered. Dumbledore did warn him not to. Harry looked down gloomily at the bit of the prophet he had torn off. Most of the page was devoted to an advertisement of Madame Malkin's robe for all occasions, which was apparently having a sale. Hey, he said, flattening it down so Hermione and Ron could both see it. Look at this. I have got all the robes I want, said Ron. No, said Harry, look, this title piece here. Ron, said Hermione, bent closer to read it. The item was barely an inch long and placed right at the bottom of the column. It was headlined Trespass at Ministry. Sturgis Podmore, 38 of number 2, Laburnum Garden, Clapham, had appeared in front of Wiscombe, charged with trespass and attempt to robbery at the Ministry of Magic on 31st August. Podmore was arrested by Ministry of Magic wizard Eric Munch, who found him attempting to force his way through a top security door at 1 o'clock in the morning. Podmore, who refused to speak, in his own defense, was convicted on both charges and sentenced to 6 months in Azkaban. Sturgis Podmore, said Ron slowly, but he is that block to look like his head's been patched, isn't he? He's one of the odd. Ron, said Hermione, casting a terrified look around them. 6 months in Azkaban, whispered Harry, shocked, just for trying to get through a door. Don't be silly, it wasn't just for trying to get through the door. What on earth was he doing at the Ministry of Magic at 1 o'clock in the morning? Breathed Hermione. Do you reckon he was doing something for the order? Ron muttered. Wait a moment, said Harry slowly. Sturgis was supposed to come and see us off, remember? The other two looked at him. Yeah, he was supposed to be part of our guard going to King's Cross, remember? And Moody was all annoyed because he didn't turn up, so that doesn't seem like he was supposed to be on a job for them, does it? Well, maybe they didn't expect him to get caught, said Hermione. It could be frame up, Ron explained excitedly. No, listen, he went on, dropping his voice dramatically at the threatening look on Hermione's face. The Ministry suspect he's one of the Dumbledore's lot, so I don't know. They learned him to the Ministry, and he wasn't trying to get through the door at all. Maybe they have just made something up to get him. There was a pause while Harry and Hermione considered this. Harry thought it seemed far-fetched. Hermione, on the other hand, looked impressed and said, do you know, I wouldn't be at all surprised if that were true. She folded up her half of the paper thoroughly. When Harry laid down his knife and fork, she seemed to come out of a reverie. Right, well, I think we should try tackle that essay for spouts on self-realizing stuff first, and if we are lucky, we'll be able to start McDonald's inanimatus conjures before lunch. He felt a small twinge of guilt at the thought of the pile of homework awaiting him upstairs, but the sky was clear, exhilarating blue, and he had not been on his firebolt for weeks. I mean, we can do it tonight, said Ron as he and Harry walked down the sloping lawn toward the Quidditch pitch, their broomstick over their shoulder. Hermione's dire warning that they would fail all their owls still ringing in their ear. And we have got tomorrow. She get to work up about work. That's her trouble. There was a pause, and he added in a slightly more anxious tone, do you think she meant it when she said we weren't copying from her? Yeah, I do, said Harry. Still, this is important too. We have got to practice if we want to stay on the Quidditch team. Yeah, that's right, said Ron in a heartened tone. And we have got plenty of time to do it all. Harry glanced over to the right as they approached the Quidditch pitch, where the trees of the Forbidden Forest were swaying darkly. Nothing flew out of them. The sky was empty, but for a few distance, owl fluttering around the Owlery Tower. He had enough to worry about. The flying horse wasn't doing him any harm. He pushed it out of his mind, collected balls from the board in the changing room, and set to work on guarding the three tall goalposts. Harry playing chaser and trying to get the quaffle past Ron. Harry thought Ron was pretty good. He blocked three-quarters of the goal. Harry attempted to put past him and play better the longer they practiced. After a couple of hours, they returned to the school, where they had lunch, during which Hermione made it quite clear that she thought they were irresponsible, then returned to the quick pitch for real training session. All their teammates but Angelina were already in the changing room when they entered. All right, Ron, said George, winking at him. Yes, said Ron, who has become quieter and quicker all the way down to the pitch. Ready to show us all up. Equal perfect, said Fred, emerging, tousled hair from the neck of his Quidditch robe. a slightly malicious grin on his face. "Shut up," said Ron, stony face, pulling on his own team, though for the first time. They fitted him well considering they had been Oliver Woods, who was rather broader in the shoulder. "Okay, everyone," said Angelina, entering from the captain's office already changed. "Let's get it to it. Alicia and Fred, if you can't just bring the ball create out for us. Oh, and there we are a couple of people out there watching, but I want you just ignore them, alright?" Something in her cold casual voice made Harry think he might know who the uninvented spectator were. And sure enough, when they left the changing room for the bright sunlight of the pitch, it was to a storm of catcalls and jeers from the Slytherin Quidditch team and assorted hanger-on who were grouped halfway up the empty stands and whose voices echoed loudly around the stadium. "What's that?" Wesley Rinding called in his sneering drawl. "Why would anyone put a flying charm on a morbidly old log like that?" Grab Goyle and Pansy Parkinson, puffed and shrunken with laughter. Ron mounted his broom and kicked off from the ground, and Harry followed him, watching his ear turn red from behind. "Ignore them," he said, accelerating to catch up with Ron. "We'll see who's laughing after we play them." "Exactly the attitude I want, Harry," said Angelina, approvingly soaring around them, around her arm and slowing to hover on the spot in front of her airborne team. "Okay, everyone, we are going to start with some phrases just to warm up. The whole team, please. Hey Johnson, what's that?" "That hairstyle anyway," shrunken Pansy Parkinson from below. "Why would anyone want to look like they have got worm coming out of their head?" Angelina swept her long braided hair out of her face and said calmly, "Spread out then, and let's see what we can do." Harry reversed away from the other to the far side of the pitch. Ron fell back toward the opposite goal. Angelina raised the quaffle with one hand and threw it hard to Fred, whose pass, the George, who passed to Harry, passed to Ron, who dropped it. The Slytherins, led by Malfoy, roared and screamed with laughter. Ron, who had plated toward the ground to catch the quaffle before it landed, pulled out of the dive untiedly so that he slipped sideways on his broom and returned to playing hide. Blushing, Harry saw Fred and George exchange looks, but uncharacteristically neither of them said anything, for which he was grateful. "Sit on, Ron," called Angelina as though nothing had happened. Ron threw the quaffle to Alyssa, who passed Harry to back, who passed to George. "Hey Potter, how's your skull feeling?" called Malfoy. "Sure you don't need a lie down. It must be, what, a whole week since you were in the hospital wing? That's a record for you, isn't it?" Fred passed to Angelina. She reserved pass to Harry, who had not been expecting it, but caught it in a very tip of his finger and passed it quickly to Ron, who longed for it and missed by inches. "Come on now, Ron," said Angelina crossly as Ron dived for the ground again, chasing the quaffle. Pay attention." It would have been hard to say whether Ron's face or the quaffle was a deeper scarlet when he returned again to playing high. Malfoy and the rest of the Slytherin team were howling with laughter. On his third attempt, Ron caught a quaffle, perhaps out of relief. He passed it on so enthusiastically that it soared straight through Cathy's outstretched hand and hit her hand in the face. "Sorry," Ron groaned, zooming forward to see whether he had done anything damage. "Get back in position, she's fine," barked Angelina. "But as you are passing to a teammate, do try not to knock her off her broom, won't you? We have got bulgers for that." Cathy's nose was bleeding. Down below, the Slytherin were stamping their feet and jeering. Fred and George covered on Cathy. "Here, take this," Fred told her, handing her something small and purple from out of his pocket. It will be clear it up in no time. Alright, called Angelina. Fred, George, go and get your bats and a bulger. Ron get up to the goal post. Harry, release the snitch when I say so. We are going to aim for Ron's goal, obviously. Harry zoomed off after twins to fetch the snitch. Ron's making a right pig's ear of things, isn't he? Said George as the three of them landed and create containing a ball and open it to exact one of the bulgers and snitch. He's just nervous, said Harry. He was fine when I was practicing with him this morning. Yeah, well, I hope he hasn't picked too soon, said Fred gloomily. They returned to the year when Angelina blew her whistle. Harry released the snitch and Fred and George let fly the bulger. From the moment on, Harry was barely aware of what the others were doing. He was his job to recapture the tiny fluttering golden ball that was worth 150 points to Seeker's team, and doing so required enormous speed and skill. He accelerated, rolling and swerving in and out of the chaser, the warm autumn air whipping his face, and a distant yell of the Slytherin so much meaningless, roaring in his ear. But that soon the whistle brought him to halt again. Stop, 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 screamed Angelina. Ron, you're not covering your middle post. Harry looked around at Ron, who was hovering in front of the left land loop, leaving the other two completely unprotected. Oh, sorry, you keep shifting around while you are watching the chaser, said Angelina. Either stay in center position until you have to move to defend a hoop, or else circle the hoop but didn't drift vaguely off to the one side. That's how you let in the last three goals. Sorry, Ron repeated, his red face shining like a beacon against the bright blue sky. And Catty, can't you do something about that nosebleed? It's just getting worse, said Cathy thickly, attempting to stem the flow with her sleeves. Harry glanced around at Fred, who was looking anxious and checking his pocket. He saw Fred pull out something purple, examining it for a second, and then look around at Cathy, evidently horror struck. Well, let's try again, said Angelina. She was ignoring the Slytherin, who had now set up a chart of Gryffindor are loser, but there was certain rigidity about her seat on that broom nevertheless. This time they had been flying for barely 3 minutes when Angelina whistle sounded. Harry, who had just sighted the snitch circling the opposite goalpost, pulled up feeling distantly aggrieved. What now? He said impatiently to Alicia, who was nearest Cathy. She said shortly. Harry turned and saw Angelina, Fred, and George all flying as fast as they could toward Cathy. Harry and Alicia sped toward her too. It was plain that Angelina had stopped training just in time. Cathy was now chalk white and covered in blood. She needs the hospital wing, said Angelina. We'll take her, said Fred. She might have swallowed a blood stop by mistake. Well, there is no point continuing with no beater and chaser gone, said Angelina gloomily, and Fred and George zoom off toward the castle, supporting Cathy between them. Come on, let's go and get changed. The Slytherin continued to chat as the trailer back into the changing room. How was practice? Asked Hermione rather coolly half an hour later, and Harry and Ron climbed through the portrait hole into the Gryffindor common room. It was Harry began. Completely Lucy, said Ron in his hollow voice, sinking into the chair beside Hermione. She looked up at Ron and her fraught sides seemed to melt. Well, it was only your first one, she said consolingly. It's bound to take time too. Who said it was me who made it Lucy? Snapped Ron. No one, said Hermione, looking take back. I thought you thought I was bound to be rubbish. No, of course I didn't. Look, you said it was Lucy, so I'm going to get started on some homework, said Ron angrily and stomped off to the stair to the boys' dormitory and vanished from the side. Hermione turned to Harry. Also using? No, said Harry loyally. Hermione raised an eyebrow. Well, I suppose he could have played better, Harry muttered, but it was only the first training session. Like you said, neither Harry nor Ron seemed to make much headway with their homework that night. Harry knew Ron was too preoccupied with how badly he had performed at quiz, and he himself was having difficulty in getting a stand-up Gryffindor or loser out of his head. They spent the whole of Sunday in the common room buried in their books while the room around them filled up, then emptied. It was another clear, fine day, and most of their fellow Gryffindors spent the day out in the ground, enjoying what might have well be some of the last sunshine that year. By the evening, Harry felt as though somebody had been beating his brain again, the inside of his skull. You know, we probably should try and get more homework done during this week, Harry muttered to Ron as they finally set aside Professor McGonagall's long essay on the inanimatous conjure spell and turned miserable to Professor Sinstra's equal long and difficult essay about Jupiter's moon. Yea, said Ron, rubbing slightly bloodshot eyes and throwing his fifth spoiled bit of parchment into the fire beside them. Listen, shall we just ask Hermione if we can have a look at what she's done? Harry glanced over at her. She was sitting with Crookshank on her lap and chatting merely to Ginny as a pair of knitting needle flashed in the mid-air in front of her, now knitting a pair of shapeless elf socks. No, he said heavily, you know she won't let us. And so they worked on while the sky outside the window became steadily darker. Slowly the crowd in the common room began to thin again. A half past 11, Harmony wandered over to them yawning. Nearly done, no, said John shortly. Jupiter's biggest moon is Ganymede, not Callisto, she said, pointing over Ron's shoulder at a line in a astronomy essay, and it's to that got volcanoes. Thanks, sneered Ron, scratching out the offending sentence. Sorry, I only, yeah, well, if you have just come over here to criticize Ron, I haven't got time to listen to the sermon, said, right, Hermione, I'm up to my neck in it here. Now look, Hermione was pointing to the nearest window. Harry and Ron both looked over. A handsome scratch owl was standing on the window sill, gazing into the room at Ron. Isn't that Holmes? Said Hermione, sounding amazed. Blimey, it is, said Ron quickly, throwing down his quill and getting to his feet. Ron, what's Percy is writing to me for? He crossed to the windows and opened it. Holmes flew inside, landed upon Ron's essay, and held out late to which a letter was attached. Ron took it off, and then Owl departed at once, leaving ink footprint across the Ron drawing of Moon 2. That's definitely Percy's handwriting, said Ron, sinking back into the chair and staring at the words on the outside of the scroll to Ronald Weasley, Gryffindor House, Hogwarts. He looked up at the other two. What do you reckon? Open it, said Hermione eagerly. Harry nodded. Ron unrolled the scroll and began to read. The father, further down the parchment, his eyes traveled. Then more pronounced became his scowl. When he had finished reading, he looked disgusted. He thrust the letter at Harry and Hermione to lean toward and other to read it together. Here on, I have only just heard from no less a person than Ministry of Magic himself, who has it from your new teacher, Professor Umbridge, that you have become a Hogwarts perfect. I was most pleasantly surprised when I heard this news and must firstly offer my congratulations. I must admit that I have always been afraid that you would take what we might call the Fred and George route rather than following in my footsteps. So you can imagine my feeling on hearing you have stopped floating authority and have decided to shoulder some real responsibility. But I want to give you more than congratulations, Ron. I want to give you some advice. which is why I am sending this at night rather than by the usual morning post. Hopefully, you will be able to read this away from praying eyes and avoid awkward question. From something the ministry late sleep when telling me you are now a perfect, I gathered that you are still seeing a lot of Harry Potter. I must tell you, Ron, that nothing could put you in danger of losing your badge more than continuous fraternization with that boy. Yes, I'm sure you are surprised to hear this. No doubt you will say that Potter has always been Dumbledore's favorite, but I feel bound to tell you that Dumbledore may not be in charge at Hogwarts much longer, and the people who count to say very different and probably more accurate view of Potter behavior. I shall say no more here, but if you look at Daily Prophet tomorrow, you will get a good idea of where the wind is blowing. And see you can't spot your truly. Seriously, Ron, you do not want to be tarred with the same brush as Potter. It could be very damaging for to your future prospect. And I am talking with here about life after school too. As you must be aware, given that our father escorted him to court, Potter has had a disciplinary hearing this summer in front of the whole Viscount, and he did not come out of it looking too good. He got off on a mere technicality, if you ask me, and many of people I have spoken to remain convinced of his guilt. It may be that you are afraid to sever ties with Potter. I know that he can be unbalanced and, for all I know, violent, but if you have any worries about this or have spotted anything else in Potter's behavior that is troubling you, I urge you to speak to Dolores Umbridge, a really delightful woman who I know will be only too happy to advise you. This led me to my other bit of advice, as I have hinted about, Dumbledore's regime at Hogwarts may soon be over. Your loyalty, Ron, should be not to him but to the school and ministry. I am very sorry to hear that so far Professor Umbridge is encountering very little cooperation from staff as she strives to make those necessary changes within Hogwarts that the ministry so ardently desired. Although she should find this easier from next week again, the prophet, tomorrow. I shall say that only this, a student who show himself willing to help Professor Umbridge now may be very well placed for head boyship in a couple of years. I'm sorry that I was unable to see more of you over the summer. It pains me to criticize our parents, but I am afraid I can no longer live under their roof while they remain mixed up with the dangerous crowd around Dumbledore. If you are writing to mother at any point, you might tell her that a certain Sturgis Podmore, who is a great friend of Dumbledore, has recently been sent to a Aspen for trespass at Ministry. Perhaps that will open their eyes to the kind of pretty criminal with whom they are currently rubbing shoulders. I count myself very lucky to have escaped the stigma of association with such people. Minister really could not be more gracious to me, and I do hope, Ron, that you will not allow family ties to blind you to the misguided nature of our parents' belief and action either. I sincerely hope that in time they will realize how mistake they were, and I shall, of course, be ready to accept a full apology when that day comes. Please think over that what I have said almost carefully, particularly the bit about Harry Potter, and congratulations against to becoming perfect, your brother Percy. Harry looked up at Ron. Well, he said, trying to sound as though he found the whole thing a joke. If you want to, what's it? He checked Percy's letter. Oh, yeah, sever ties with me. I swear I won't get violent. Give it back, said Ron, holding out his hand. He is, said Ron, said jerkily, tearing Percy's letter into half. The words, he tore it into quarters. Because he tore into eight, he threw and pieces into the fire. Come on, we have got to get this finished sometime before dawn. he said briskly to Harry, pulling Professor Sinstra's essay back toward him. Hermione was looking at Ron with an odd expression on her face. "Oh, give them here," she said abruptly. "What?" said Ron. "Give them to me. I'll look through them, correct them," she said. "Are you serious?" Hermione, you are a lifesaver," said Ron. "What can I what you can say if we promise we'll never leave our homework this late again," she said, holding out both hand of their essay, but she looked slightly amused all the same. "Thanks a million, Harmony," said Harry weakly, passing over his essay and sinking back into the armchair, rubbing his eyes. It was now past midnight, and the common room was deserted. But for the three of them and Cruikshank, the only sound was that of Harmony's quill scratching out sentence here and there essay, and the ruffle of the page as she checked various facts in reference books flew across the table. Harry was exhausted. He also felt an odd emptying feeling in his stomach that had nothing to do with tiredness and everything to do with the letter now curling backly in the heart of the fire. He knew that half of them people inside Hogwarts thought him strange, even mad. He knew that the Daily Prophet had been making snide allusion to him for months, but there was something about seeing it written down like that in Percy's writing, about knowing that Percy was advising Ron to drop him and even to tell tales on him from Bridge that made his situation real to him as nothing else had. He had known Percy for 4 years, had stayed in their house during the summer, shared a tent with him during Quidditch World Cup, and even seen awarded full marks by him in the second task of the Travisardi tournament last year. Yet now Percy thought him unbalanced and possibly violent, and with a surge of sympathy for his godfather, Harry thought that Cyrus was probably the only person he knew who could really understand how he felt at the moment, because Cyrus was in the same situation. Nearly everyone in the Wizardian world thought Cyrus is a dangerous murderer and a great Voldemort supporter, and he had had to live with the knowledge for 14 years. Harry blinked. He had just seen something in the fire that could not have been there. It had flashed into sight of vanish immediately. No, it could not have been. He had imagined it because he had been thinking about Cyrus. "Okay, write that down," Hermione said to Ron, pushing his essay and sheet covered with her own writing back to Ron, "and then copy out his conclusion, and I have written for you." "Hermione, you are already honestly the most wonderful person I have ever met," said Ron weakly, "and if I am ever rude to you again, "I'll know you are back to normal," said Hermione. "Harry, yours is okay except for this bit of the end. I think you must have misheard Professor Sinstra's Europa's convert in eyes, not mice." Harry Harry had slid off his chair onto his knees and was now crouching on the sign nearby, hearthrug gazing into flames. "Harry," said Ron uncertainly, "why are you down there?" "Because I have just seen Cyrus' head in the fire," said Harry. He spoke quite calmly. After all, he had seen Cyrus' head in the very fire previous year and talked to it too. Nevertheless, he could not be sure that he had really seen it this time. It had vanished so quickly. "Cyrus' head," Hermione repeated. "You mean like when he wanted to talk to you during the Travisar tournament? But he wouldn't do that now. It would be too, Cyrus," she gasped, gazing at the fire. Ron dropped his quill. There is midair of the dancing flames at Cyrus' head, long dark hair falling around his gleaming face. "I was starting to think you had to go to bed before everyone else had disappeared," he said. "I have been checking every hour. You have been popping into the fire every hour," Harry said, half laughing, "just for a few seconds to check if a coast was clear yet." "But what if you had been seen?" said Hermione anxiously. "Well, I think girl first year by the look of her might have got a glimpse of me earlier. But don't worry," Cyrus said hastily, as Hermione clapped her hand to her mouth. "I was gone the moment she looked back at me, and I'll bet she just thought I was an oddly shaped log or something. But Cyrus, this is taking an awful risk, Harmony began. You sound like Molly, said Cyrus. This was the only way I could come up with answering Harry's letter without resorting to a code, and codes are breakable. At the mention of Harry's letter, Hermione and Ron had both turned to stare him. You didn't say you had written to Harry, said Hermione accusingly. I forgot, said Harry, which was perfectly true. His meeting with Chow in Owlery had driven everything before it out of his mind. Don't look at me like that, Hermione. There was no way anyway would have got secret information out of it, was there, Cyrus? No, it was very good, said Cyrus, smiling. Anyway, we had better be quick just in case we are disturbed. Your score. What about? Ron began, but Hermione said quickly. Well, tell you afterward. Go on, Cyrus. Well, I know it can't be fun when it hurt, but we don't think it's anything to really worry about. It kept hacking all last year, didn't it? Yes, said Dumbledore. Said it happened whenever Voldemort was feeling a powerful emotion, said Harry, ignoring and as usual Ron and Hermione's winces. So maybe he was just, I don't know, really angry or something the night I had the detention. Well, now he's back. It sounds to hurt more often, said Cyrus. So you don't think it had anything to do with Umbridge touching me when I was in detention with her? Harry asked. I doubt it, said Cyrus. I know her by reputation, and I am sure she's no Death Eater. She's foul enough to be one, said Harry darkly, and Ron and Hermione nodding vigorously in agreement. Yes, but the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters, said Cyrus with a weary smile. I know she's a nasty piece of work, though you should her Remus talk about her. Does Lupin know her? Asked Harry quickly, remembering Umbridge's comment about dangerous half-breed during her first lesson. No, said Cyrus, but she drafted a bit of anti-werewolf legislation 2 years ago that make it almost impossible for him to get a job. Harry remembered how much shabbier Lupin looked these days when his dislike to Umbridge deepened even further. What she's got against werewolf, said Hermione angrily. Scared of them, I expect, said Sarah, smiling at her indignation. Apparently, she looted part humans. She campaigned to have member people round up and tagged last year. To imagine wasting your time and energy prosecuting Marketplace when there are little storage like creature on the loose. Ron laughed, but Hermione looked upset. Cyrus, she said reproachfully, honestly, if you made a bit of effort with Creature, I'm sure he had response after all. You are the only member of his family he got left, said Professor Dumbledore said. So, what are Umbridge's lesson like? Cyrus interrupted. Is she training you all to kill half-breed? No, said Harry, ignoring Hermione's affronted look at being cut off in her defense of Creature. She is not letting us use magic at all. All we do is read stupid textbooks, said Ron. Oh well, that figures, said Cyrus. Our information from inside the ministry is that Bud doesn't want to train in combat. Trained in combat, repeated Harry. Imperiously, what does he think we are doing here? Forming some sort of bizarre army. That's exactly what he thinks we are doing, said Cyrus. Or rather, that's exactly what he is afraid Dumbledore is doing. There was a pause. At this, then Ron said, That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard, including all the stuff that Luna Lovegood come out with. So we are being prevented from learning defense against the dark art because Fudge is scared we'll use spell against the ministry, said Hermione looking furious. Yep, said Cyrus. First thing Dumbledore will stop at nothing to seize power. He's getting more paranoid about Dumbledore by the day. It's not a matter of time before he has Dumbledore arrested on some dumb charges. This reminded Harry of Percy's letter. Do you know if there is going to be anything about Dumbledore in the Daily Prophet tomorrow. Only Ron's brother Percy reckons there will be. I don't know, said Cyrus. I haven't seen anyone from the Order all weekend. They're all busy. It's just been Creature and me here. There was a definite note of bitterness in Cyrus' voice. So you haven't had any news about Hagrid either, said Cyrus. Well, he was supposed to be back by now. No one's sure what happened to him. And seeing their stricken face, he added quickly, but Dumbledore not worried. So don't you three get yourself in a state. I'm sure Hagrid's fine, but if he was supposed to be back by now, said Hermione in a small worried voice. Madame Maxim was with him. We have been in touch with her, and she says they got separated on the journey home, but there nothing to suggest he hurt or well, nothing to suggest he's not perfectly okay. Unconvinced, Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged worried look. Listen, don't get asking too many questions about Hagrid, said Cyrus hastily. It will just draw even more attention to the fact that he's not back, and I know Dumbledore doesn't want that. Hagrid thought he'll be okay, and then they did not appear. Electric cheater Adi Cyrus added, when you are next Hogsmeade weekend anyway, I was thinking to get away with the dog Dickens at the station, didn't we? I thought I could. No, said Harry and Hermione together very loudly. Cyrus, did you see the Daily Prophet? Said Hermione anxiously. Oh, that, said Cyrus grinningly. They're always guessing where I am. They haven't really got a clue. Yeah, but we think this time they have, said Harry. Something Malfoy said on the train. Maybe us think he knew it was you. And his father was on the platform, Cyrus. You know Lucius Malfoy, so don't come up here. Whatever you do, it's Malfoy recognize you again. All right, I have got the point, said Cyrus. He looked most displeased, just an idea. Though you might like to get together. I just don't want to chucked back in a cabin, said Harry. There was a pause in which Cyrus looked out at the fire at Harry, or crease between his slunked eyes. You are less like your father than I thought, he said finally, a definite coldness in his voice. The risk would have been what made it fun for James. Look, well, I had better getting going. I can hear creatures coming down the stair, said Cyrus. He was sure he was right. I like to tell you a time I can make back into the fire, then shall I? If you can stand it risk. There was a tiny pop, and the place where Sarah's head had been was flicking flame once more. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.